Morning, guys, once again. As I said, this is our first episode, guys. Another Black Child Umbrella. I'm here today. Autiami. I call him Gamla. Gamla is another word for boss or manager. And the reason why I call him this because him and I actually have a history because we used to work together. But more importantly, this is the person that I look up to as a mentor, as a khutbani. And I hoped and wished that having him as the first person we're going to interview is going to assist us in empowering the black child. Considering the fact that he grew up from a Lokshin, the same environments that we come from. So Ngamla, thank you very much for being here and making time to be here with us. And without wasting time, Ngamla, I think we can unpack this. Maybe let's start with who, okay, I know Ngamla is a nickname, but yeah, who Neo is and your background, just briefly.
All right, Papi, I think, firstly, I think thank you so much for having me as your first guest. It's definitely quite an honor. I hear in your introduction that, you really hold me at high regard. So I just want to let you know, and maybe the audience out there, just to know that I also hold you at quite high regard. I think we have had a positive history together. I've been enjoying watching you grow, watching you get to sort of the stage that you are. But I think more than anything, I'm really impressed about your want and your drive to actually help people. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you very much for having me. So my name is Neo Boji. I'm originally from Alexandra. I think I had a very fair upbringing. I had good parents, parents that put me through through good schools. And I find myself, finishing school, tried a little bit of varsity, but, in our younger days, the discipline might not necessarily be there. So I find myself unemployed eventually after being a dropout and, hustling and looking for a job. And I had to really find myself and figure out how it is that I'm actually going to move forward and break into the working industry. And I think post that, I've developed myself. I've been in very tough situations, but I found a way to get myself out. I moved within the financial services sector. Started out as a simple salesman. Find myself now in leadership. At least the better part of the last 10 years, I've been in senior leadership, and it's been quite a journey.
Thank you, Ngamla. Thank you for that. I want to touch base on two things, Ngamla. Firstly, you mentioned Alex.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know Alex, I spend most of my time in Alex.
Yeah.
So when you say Alex, are you referring to the Alex iri nakalangare bona mo TV? Kasi where there's, for the lack of a better word, I don't want to use the word shack, but where there's shacks, there's a lot of people in one space. Are you referring to that Alex?
Yes. So I don't know of any other Alexandra in South Africa. But yeah, that's where my family is from. That's where I'm from. That's my entire history is from there. That's the Alexandra that I'm referring to. Yes, there's one or two shacks.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe one or two is an understatement. But we love our location.
I want to touch base before we go into detail, Ngamla. You mentioned that you were unemployed at some point in your career.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned two things that are key and then I feel that you and I have in common. You said that you were raised by good parents.
Yeah.
And by parents, you are referring to a plural, meaning mom and dad were present.
That's correct.
In your life.
That's correct.
Gamla, Nagyago Alex, I don't see so much of Majida or kids that are growing up in that environment where they are raised by both parents. And I see Alex as an environment that is influenced by alcohol, drugs, and all these other elements that we see outside the norm. And also, even when you speak, you're very articulate. And, when someone, in South Africa, when someone is articulated, the first assumption is this person is educated. This person is smart. Now, with you growing up in Alex and having to be raised by both parents, is that what you saw growing up in your environment, or was just you being that specific family where it's just out of 10, it's only Ngamla and his siblings perhaps who were raised by parents, or the presence of parents rather?
Look, I mean, I think this is, let's call it, there's some social ills that do plague, certain townships, Alex being one of them. I think really if you look around from a social aspect, there is a lot of kids that are growing up either in single parent households, or that are impacted by, you know, the macroeconomical effects. You know, so for example, there's poverty. There's people that might turn to, whether you call it alcohol or whatever the case may be, maybe even crime. And I think it's got a whole history behind it. It's got a whole history behind it. So I think the short answer is yes. You know, it's something that you are exposed to. You look around in your environment. Look, like you said, I think I was raised by parents that, you know, at least I had the privilege for, you know, to get a good education. And I think somewhere in my childhood as well, we were able also to move out of Alexandra. So I got the opportunity to grow up in a little bit of a quieter environment. And I think all of those things had a positive impact in sort of my upbringing. But it doesn't take away from the fact that you have that exposure. You see it on a daily basis. You see it probably getting worse over the last 10 to 20 years. You know, and you can only imagine how it impacts the youth and how it impacts the youth in terms of being functional when they get to adulthood. So I think definitely, you know, there's those aspects and those factors that actually influence in terms of how people grow up, what it means that it's going to be, that, you know, in terms of what is the propensity for them to succeed, you know, when it comes to certain stages in their life. What decisions do they make? What kind of mentorship do they have? Whether it's from a parental perspective, whether it's from a surroundings perspective. So yes, there's a definite impact.
Okay. I appreciate that, Ngamla. Two things that I just want to highlight. You mentioned that you were fortunate enough to go to varsity, right? Do your parents have academic background? Or are they in the context of are they professionals? If you don't mind sharing that with us. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, because I just want to share something. But before I give you a bit of my background, I just want to ask that question in that manner. Are your parents educated, or are they professionals? What's their sort of academic background?
So, I mean, I come from a strong working class family.
Yeah.
Working class meaning your average job. You know, but I had a very entrepreneurial father. You know, I think he bettered himself or he invested himself in terms of further educating himself. So, yes, you know, he did further educate himself, short courses here and there, qualifications here and there, similar to what we do in our industry in terms of industry qualifications, regulatory qualifications and stuff like that. So, you know, obviously that started to improve him from his ability to actually progress in life. So yes, I think, you know, I've been privileged to have parents that did see the need to improve themselves, whether it's educationally, whether it's consistency in the work that they do. And I think there's definite value in that. There's value that's passed on to the kids as far as that is concerned, because that resilience is required, particularly, you know, when you've got parents that are showing you the way, that are able to mentor you. So yes, you know, I had parents that, once again, working class, you know, but they definitely did see the need to improve themselves, whether it's educational, financially, job-wise, and so on and so on.
The reason why I was asking this in Gamla, if you look at my background at high level, my parents are not academically strong.
Yeah.
And when I think of the people that I grew up with in my circle, and I've got another friend where he's an actuary, and when I look at him, he's got a strong family background in the context of academics. Growing up in Alex, do you think the influence that the parents have in terms of their background has some sort of effect in terms of how you turn out? You know, he had a strong background from family, whether dad was entrepreneurial or not, but that foundation was there to make sure that how you turn out, it was a reflection of how your parents were kind of guiding you. Because when I look at it for myself, my parents were big on go to school, go to school, go to school. But only to find out that they were only restricted by circumstance, because they didn't have access to go to school themselves. But at least they were pushing that narrative.
Yeah.
Whereas in your case, you know, you highlighted that at least your dad did some courses, you got some qualifications. Do you think that also does impact the average black, especially go Alex? And I wanna centralize our conversation around Alex, because, you know, not to also wait to Alex. But with that being said, when you look at Alex and the environment that go Alex, it's quite. It's very rare to see someone kind of Alex, I'm a doctor or something, because it's like, okay, we're expecting you to be subject to the norm. But if you come out and say, hey, I made it, like, hey, what?
Yeah.
So do you really think that background from parents has some sort of impact on how you turn out to be individually as a person?
Look, I mean, I don't have the statistics, but I would imagine, given the population of Alexandra, relative to the population, the people that become doctors or become professionals is probably quite low. And once again, there's a massive impact. Or one thing that plays a big factor, would be the economical sort of circumstances of the area itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know, and we can't ignore the fact that, where people are living below the breadline and so on and so on, there's going to be some sort of impact in terms of the future of the youth. We have to look at this. We have to look at this, Tabiso, as what actually impacts, or what impacts the ability for people to move forward, particularly when it comes to the youth. What impacts the ability for the youth to be able to go to a university, for example? What impacts the ability for you to take your child to, let's call it, a better school, for lack of a better phrase? And I think it always boils down to how able are we from an economical perspective. So, yes, I mean, the guidance is needed from parents if there's know-how. And if you don't have the know-how, and you don't have the background, and you don't even know where to turn to, the best you can do is send your child to a school and hope he does well. I don't think you can mentor somebody if you yourself do not have the experience. Now, we use the term quite broadly when we say go get an education. What does it actually mean? What are the relevant courses that you should be taking? Do you know that in this day and age, you should take your child who's already in high school maybe to do an extra course in IT, because that's where the world is headed. Do you have that knowledge? I do. I do, because I hire IT people all the time. I know how much we pay them. I know that is the future of any business. But you can't expect the layman that's sitting in an environment, as you've described, like Alexandra, just to know that up front. So we start to rely on our children educating themselves. Do they even have the tools for that? Do they have internet? Is the infrastructure available for them to go and do the research when necessary? And then you look to the schools. Are they teaching them that in schools? Because we have to look at every touch point and say, how do we better the child's ability to prospect? How do we better the child's ability to understand the world that they're growing up into? And once again, there's a massive influence on them from the environment around them. There's a massive influence from the parents around them. If the parents are not pushing them in the right direction, unfortunately, the propensity for them to go that way is gonna decline.
Noted. You mentioned you were unemployed in Gambla.
Yeah.
So, just to rephrase what you were saying earlier in your submission. Wileskela didn't work out, you dropped out, obviously, with a plan. During that phase, you were unemployed.
Yeah.
Right? You're still in Alex, I'm assuming.
No. I was,
at the time. Okay. Take me through the journey of when you were unemployed. Because, both you and I are men. In our culture and society, being a man means it's a plan.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you make the plan.
Sure.
We are faced by a challenge in South Africa where unemployment is high.
Yeah.
We're saying about, I'm not sure if my stats are correct, but we're plus minus around 42-43% unemployment rate.
Yeah.
Right? In your journey of unemployment, this is Neo, you just left Alex, you moved to a new different environment, your dad's vision is still there. As his kids, guys, go to school, do better, because that's what every parent wants.
Yes, of course,
right?
yeah.
Now, take us through the journey of when you were unemployed. Where was the turning point? What changed? What were you doing that you had to make sure that at some point is going to result into you making sure that you are employed? But I want you to narrate this as if you are telling that average child, Gogasi, who's unemployed and who's sitting there, who doesn't know tomorrow, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's a reality that we live in now. You've just mentioned the unemployment rate, and I think the youth unemployment rate is probably sitting at around about 45%, somewhere there as well. It's quite high. General unemployment rate is also sitting somewhere there, just I think in the higher 30s. I think at the time, and it's a different time, Tabza, which is why I'm saying we live in a different reality. I mean, at the time, when I was looking for my first job, for example, unemployment was sitting only at about 23%. And there's a direct correlation in terms of how easy is it to find a job and what the actual unemployment rate actually is. But I remember at the time we used to go look for jobs in the newspaper. Every Wednesday, workplace would come out. You'd go there. Your parents would give you, whether it's 350, marking pen. You go stand next to a public phone. Check our phone. There's no email, none of that stuff. I remember I got my first job, and they told me, I think somewhere called, this is Germiston. Yeah, to get Germiston. I fit like one interview, I'm not.
Yeah.
But you got the job, so but I come tomorrow dressed in black and took in your shirt. I'm not. I get home, I tell my parents, hey, it was a span, I'm not. Following day, I about be there at 7 o'clock. Hey, I get there, tabs. Music, they give me some school bag, but let's say didn't talk there. But when I spend hours to go out onto the streets and go shop to shop, or register the toys, the divide. If you can span it, she's a from there, I got home. Get home about my 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Yeah. Where you from at this time? Well, when I thought you said you went to work, hey, this is what just he says, don't go back. And the reason I'm telling you that story is because at least I had somebody to say to me, hey, hold on, you're going the wrong direction here. Let's change direction. Let's change course. And I had to sit a little bit and find something that was a little bit more suitable. I got lucky and I found something. Once again, like I said, at that time, it was a different time. Jobs were a little bit more easier to find. But easier to find, I think combined with factoring in, the fact that are you good at getting interviewed, for example. Fast forward to now. I mean, if you look at now, and I think about, and I look at the unemployment rate, and I look at some of, I'm in an industry where we do impact sourcing. We interview a lot of people and we hire a lot of people. We hire a lot of youth. And, and I look at a lot of the youth that comes in that is currently unemployed are looking for jobs that have never been employed, or that are sitting in 2 years they haven't been employed but they were working before. And I can imagine how tough it is. I can imagine how tough it is for that youth. And I can imagine how tough it is to break into the working market, because you have to have experience, for example. You have to have the ability to interview, for example. You have to have certain skills that, particularly in the private sector, we're looking for certain skills. You can't just rock up and interview and then you've got a job. So, I mean, they go through something that I think we didn't go through back in the day. And I think I also can't compare it to, so for example, COVID. I think I went a couple of, a month or two, but I've got a lot of experience in the industry. I've got a lot of backing. I've got a lot of places that I can go to in terms of, finding employment. And when I say that, I don't mean that I can just walk out and go anywhere. I'm just saying that it's so much easier for me to sit in an environment or sit in an interview, articulate myself, be able to show my history, and take it from there. But as opposed to somebody now who's currently unemployed, who's probably young, who's probably just got a matric, who probably doesn't know where to turn to in terms of seeking a job or looking for employment, who probably doesn't even know what skills that are required in order for you to pass an interview. And the best I can say to that youth is that they need to empower themselves. That's the first thing. I think they need to, first of all, try and research as much as possible before walking into any kind of environment where you're going to be interviewed. The second part is cast the net as wide as possible, meaning get yourself registered on employment sites. Go and research who's hiring. Go research, government. Is the government hiring? Go research about volunteering. It's good to see on somebody's CV that they were volunteering for a year somewhere, because it shows that resilience. It shows that this person is not just willing to sit around and do nothing. But the only way something happens is if you take action, really. I think that's one of the things that I can say to somebody who is going through unemployment and is looking to get placed somewhere or looking to, to get a job somewhere. Cast the net very wide, make yourself seen, put your hand up wherever possible, volunteer where you can, and just stay resilient.
Ngabla, speaking of volunteering, I just want to share something here quickly. I once came to a company and volunteered. Mm-hmm. I was unemployed. Got a baby. Fortunately for me, I had a car. So, when you have a car and you dress up well, you change the narrative.
Yeah.
I was broke, I was unemployed, but people didn't know.
Yeah.
So I'd leave my house, I'll go to the company, Kispani, and I asked for a job. I knew there was no job.
Yeah.
And I want to align these two words, volunteering and being street smart. And I want to put emphasis on the word street smart because I've seen you as that guy. Because I've worked with you. Out here, it's a bastard. And when you say street smart, we're not referring to the term loosely, but someone can go to varsity and get a degree. But you put that person in an interview, they don't know how to position themselves, they don't know how to project themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I managed to volunteer on the basis of I was going into that company, knowing very well working there.
Yeah.
My objective is to do better than him. In other words, I'm going to capitalize on your weakness.
Sure.
Because one, you're on the company's payroll. I'm not on the company's payroll. If I do better than you, it means I've secured employment for myself indirectly. Because the company's going to look at this, we are paying this person, he's not making money for us. This one is doing it for free and is doing a better job.
Yeah.
Do you think our programs in varsity, in schools, are shaping us to be street smart? Or is it just a matter of go to varsity, get a degree, and then go focus on LinkedIn and Indeed and apply and hope and get a better job? What do you think there is? Do you think there is a gap between someone who has a degree but they also are street smart, or it's just someone who goes to school, graduates, and hope and prays that they get a job?
I think there's certain jobs that you would never be able to do without the qualification.
Yeah.
I think that's a fact. You can't go be an actuary without an actuarial degree. But at the same time, I think there are jobs that you can, let's call it, work your way to being qualified.
Okay.
Right? So if you find yourself in and by the way, your strategy to volunteer at a company to do better, that's interesting.
I actually did that.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. But I think to answer your question, it's people sit in their degrees for 3-4 years. And through that 3-4 years, I think what they also need to be doing is also need to find ways to prepare themselves for when they go into the job market. I've seen both. I've seen guys that come straight out of varsity come in and do a job. But by the time the guy comes in from varsity to come do the job, he finds somebody who's already been doing it for 3 years, and this person doesn't have that qualification. They're doing the same job. The likelihood is that the person with the more experience is probably going to do better, maybe at the beginning, than the guy who's got the degree. Or you might find that the guy who's got the degree has already got an entrepreneurial spirit, is willing to learn, he wants to prove himself. He understands that he needs to get a return on the investment of the last 3 or 4 years and could do better as well. So I think the person who's been doing it for 3 years and has worked his way up to having the same job as somebody who's got a degree has done extremely well. The pay might not be the same, because, who's worth more. But I think when you're making reference to, being street smart, I think it's being entrepreneurial, it's being able to adapt very quickly, able to learn as quickly as possible, but also able to understand that I've got a deficit that I need to cover. So I'll give you an example. Somebody's got an accounting degree and, I've just come out of I've just started a job without that degree. I know I've got a deficit to cover because I'm competing with Papi, who's already got the educational background, and I don't. So which means, what do? Do I research more? Do I read more? Do I make myself a lot more available? Do I work longer hours than Papi? So I think there's many different scenarios. But I've found myself in a situation where I've also had to be a little bit more hardworking than a colleague, or a little bit more outgoing than a colleague, or a little bit more, working extra hours or whatever the case may be, because you understand where the deficit is. For as long as you understand the deficit, then you understand what it is that you need to do.
Gamla, we face what we call rejection. And rejection comes in many ways. Earlier on, you mentioned that we have a plus minus 40% unemployment rate. What I've learned to understand, and this is not a proven statistically, but based on experience and me just understanding how the human factor works. Along the way, there is an element of giving up.
Yeah.
Because in most cases, we've applied, we get rejected.
Yeah.
I once applied, so I got a degree in zoology,
Okay.
and I've always wanted to work in the conservation space.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough, I got a job in the USA. I was working for a big corporate, Disney World.
Okay.
I remember applying for a company in South Africa. I won't mention the name. At that, because I've been applying even when I was in South Africa, they rejected me.
Yeah.
But at the time, I hoped that okay, since I'm in the US, at least when I apply now, they might give me that credibility to at least recognize me.
Yeah.
I tell you for free, they still rejected me. I'm like, there's a way that rejection can be harbored in your brain and in your feelings. My question then is, there are people who've been applying and applying to a point where they end up giving up.
Yeah.
I get finals, we can't
Yeah.
get these jobs.
Yeah.
Then they end up sitting there and increasing that unemployment rate. How do we then, or maybe let me ask you, if you were in that process where you've been rejected before, how did you overcome that to a point where you ended up having to secure that job?
I mean, rejection is I'm in sales. I'm in sales, and I like to tell my people that I work on the laws of average. If I cast my net wide enough, if the laws of average say 10% of people will buy, and I phone 10 people, 2 people will buy. I mean, 1 person will buy.
Yeah.
I phone 100 people, 10% of that 100 will buy. And I think it's the same as when you seeking employment, and you're applying for certain roles and applying for certain jobs. There's got to be the laws of average, but also you need to understand what puts you in a better position. I'm sure the quality of your CV puts you in a better position. I'm pretty sure that the quality of how you interview puts you in a better position. I'm pretty certain that the industry that you decide to choose to apply at might put you in a better position, because then it might speak to the laws of average. Yeah. Rejection is always going to hurt. It's always going to hurt, particularly like in your case where you said that you studied zoology and you want to go work in conservation. And I mean, it's quite a niche sort of environment. You're applying to a place that only probably hires 1 or 2 people every 6 months. Or you get what I'm saying? In the position that you're looking for. So what does it mean? It means you're competing probably against 30, 40, 50 other CVs at any given point. But then let's say you move to an industry like, let's say, the call center industry, the financial services, where they're hiring upwards of 300. There's companies that are hiring 300 people a month. All right? Your CV is one of 350. So which means there's a much bigger chance that you're going to get that role, as opposed to if you are applying for a more niche sort of environment. I mean, even if you look at, for example, the unemployment at a graduate level, I think it's sitting at plus minus 10%, which means there's 10% of graduates that are also going through what it is that you're going through right now, or that you are going through, in terms of applying and applying and applying, probably getting rejected. Why are they getting? Maybe they're applying for HR jobs, maybe they're applying for whatever it is that they studied, and then they find themselves having to pivot and go somewhere else. That's another option, by the way. If you're experiencing a high level of rejection, try and pivot. Try to see what else you can do with the qualification that you've got, in terms of moving into a different industry. How can I take what I've got and go apply it in a different industry? Take a teaching, for example, teaching degree. So I've got a degree in education, and I'm struggling to find a job at a school, for example. How can I take that teaching degree and go apply it somewhere else? Maybe I need to go into training. Maybe I need to go into, companies have training departments, for example, learning and development. Is that something that I can go do? It might be far off from the schools or the education system, but you could find yourself at a financial institution, doing, running the learning and development department. So you have to try and be a little bit more creative. The rejection will be there. Not every CV that you send through is going to, not every company you apply to is going to accept you. That's just the facts.
I want to ask you a tough question. You're at senior level now in your current role.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in the industry for almost, 2 decades now?
Yeah.
I saw a video on TikTok, and it was from an HR point of view.
Yeah.
And the comment that was made was, no matter how much you apply, the company know who they want to hire. But they were making this. To me, it had an undertoning feeling to it. But it was as if the person was saying, you can apply 100 times, chief. If they want Neo, they want Neo. If they want Papi, they want Papi. Is there truth to that? Or is it just people feeling...
I think it depends what you mean, they know what they want to hire. I mean, when we want to hire somebody, when I want to put somebody in a role, I've got a spec.
Yeah.
I know who I'm looking for. I already know. I already know who I'm looking for. I know from a character perspective. I know from a culture perspective. And culture, I mean, are you a culture fit in our business? I know from a skills perspective. I might even know from an educational background perspective, experience. So, I mean, if you narrow those things down, you kind of narrow down to, you shortlist to a small a group of people. If Papi, does not meet that criteria, unfortunately, even if he applies 100 times, unless that criteria changes 6 months or a year later, we might consider him. But if you don't meet my criteria from a spec perspective, unfortunately, you're not even going to get through to getting interviewed. But I mean, if you're making reference to we know who we want to hire, as in we've identified Papi,
Yeah.
and Papi is the one that we want to go hire. It's the private sector. If they want to really hire Papi, they'll hire Papi. That's why they headhunt. That's why they go find people at other companies and they say, hey, would you like to come and work for us? We've heard about you. We've seen you on LinkedIn. We know your skills. How much do you want? So there is, I guess, a little bit of truth in it.
Yeah.
But I think the truth is more layered than what you're asking, because there's many reasons why I would reject the CV and take one over the other.
Speaking of skill, Ngamla, I want to make reference to what both you and I have experienced, because you and I have worked together.
Yeah.
At some point, you were my boss, and that's why I still saved you as boss. There was a time where I applied for a company, and again, I want to make reference to the term street smart, and this is just me trying to portray this narrative of being street smart.
Yeah.
What I did then in that month, I applied for other companies.
Yeah.
And I got the confirmation of employment.
Yeah.
But I never informed you until the last hour.
Sure.
And I did that on purpose, because in that month, I wanted to push my sales. I wanted to push my performance.
Sure.
So that by the time I come to and say, Ngamla, I got another job, I'm going to put you in a tough position.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy just tripled my revenue and now he wants to leave.
Yeah.
And you then said to me, Tabza, you know what? I can't let you go. Tell me what you want. And I'm referring to the term skill here, because companies hire for skill, right?
Yeah.
In return to pay you, basically.
Sure.
How important is development of skill? Let's say you've got the job now. You've passed the experience of, or the process of, you're unemployed, the rejection part of it.
Yeah.
Now, waspani.
Yeah.
How important is skill? Because, there's this narrative of, I've worked with people around me who have always had the perception of sometimes tenure means growth.
Sure.
And it's not always the case.
No,
You can have
no,
someone
not
working
at
in a
all.
company for 10 years, this one comes for 2 months, but he does more than what you've been doing in 10 years.
Exactly.
And therefore, that turns into a promotion or whatever the case might be.
Exactly.
How important is it then for an individual to upskill themselves while they have a job? Because I've got this feeling that we have a tendency of, now it means get relaxed. Because just to make reference to what I did, if I'm an agent, what I know is what I know. You can't take it away from me. So when I wake up every day, I come to that company, I'm not focusing on what I know, because I can do it with my eyes closed.
Sure.
My next role is becoming a team leader.
Sure.
I want to know, what does this guy do and how he does it. And that's how I'm upskilling myself in the process.
Yeah.
So by the time I leave here, I'm not going to apply to be an agent. I'm going to apply to be a team leader elsewhere, because
Sure.
then I would have gained the experience through you as a person who's guiding me.
Yeah.
So how then is it important for an individual who's employed now and they can actually upskill themselves in the process of growing their personal portfolio?
I think it's very important. I think it's very important. I think anybody that's sitting at a whatever level, it's important for them to understand what it takes to be at the next level.
Yeah.
There's a lot that person is going to be able to do on their own. But I think the next level needs to then be almost developed, whether it's by the business or your mentor or whoever it is that's assisting you within that business. What kind of value do you bring in? For you, for example, the first example that you made in terms of, you've got a job offer somewhere else, and now you want to leave, and your manager says to you, listen, we can't afford to lose you. Let's negotiate. What would make you stay? It means that we've seen the value that you bring. It means that we understand that you can generate the revenue. It also means that maybe we might have shortchanged you at the beginning, and now we're seing what you're actually worth, and we're willing to match that, or willing to even better that. But there's different ways, I guess, to navigate that space. But I think the most important thing, depending on what industry you're working in, also, sometimes, certain industries is, if you deliver, more than the other person, whether the person's been here 10 years, 15 years, if you deliver more, they might be able to see the value in that, and that might be the reason for you to progress. Some other industries look maybe for leadership and say, you might not necessarily be the highest revenue generator, but we could use somebody like you in the next level from a leadership perspective. You got all the skills that we require in order for you to be effective there. But it's all about educating yourself and knowing what it is that it takes. I recently had somebody come and ask me and say, what does it take? And I told the person, and I see that person actively working on actually improving themselves. I see that person actively working on ensuring that they can be, let's call it, identified as the next talent.
Yeah. Ngamla, ambition. Do you really think, especially us as black people, young black men, are we really that ambitious? And when I say ambition, I mean there's this element of comfort that we have in our space. Like, for example, you get a job and then it's like, okay, that's it, get up. We grew up in environments where most of us, especially our household, if you're fortunate enough, you've made it, or you get a back room, but they're like 1,000 rand, I don't know how much it is, and it's kind of like it's okay. Do you think as black men in South Africa, we're ambitious enough to see the bigger picture? And I want to make reference to the lack of a better word, because there's this language and these people, they tend to make their money or they're living on doing other forms of activities that we don't want to discuss in detail. But do you think for those who want to go to the corporate environment, who want to work a 9-to-5 job, who want to be entrepreneurs, are we genuinely that hungry? Do we have that ambition to say, you know what, I don't see myself as just driving a Golf one and living go back room and that's it? Do we see beyond that? Do you really think we have that in us, especially in the black culture, growing up in the townships, to see more than just, let's go Alex or go Soweto, that will suffice? Do you think we have that in us?
But you see, Tabiso, I think the real question is who's showing us? It's the exposure. Similar to sort of how we started this discussion in terms of, what are we seeing around us? Who's giving us direction? Who's telling us that it's actually possible? It's a mindset thing ultimately, right? Your ceiling is only what you can imagine. And if you can't imagine anything beyond that, that is called a lack of ambition.
Yeah.
Ambition is also, remember, there's ambition and then there's dreaming. Ambition is really understanding what is possible and saying, I'm going to get that, right? But also, ambition kind of means nothing if, you don't have the tools to get there.
Yeah.
Who's assisting us? Who's assisting, the guys that are looking and saying, I want to be there. Is it possible for them? Do they see it as something that's possible, or do they see it as just a pipe dream? Yes, not everybody's going to get there. Not everybody's going to get there. And lots of people have gotten there. I mean, there's many stories of people from the townships that have done well. Extremely many stories. But if you don't have the exposure, if your exposure is I see, for example, I've worked at the bank. It's a completely different environment than working at a BPO, for example. I've worked all over the country. There's certain environments where you go work, you also go, let me go quickly to Woolworths and go buy myself a jacket.
Because of the environment changes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it starts to influence how you see things. You look around and, people are driving different cars. You go, hey, let me go to the dealership and see how much that thing is, right? Because it starts to open your eyes and expose you to, different things. And which is why I talk about exposure. Who's showing them? Have they seen it? Do they know it's possible? Have they seen the amount of black guys that look exactly like them? Walking around in suits at the bank and making a good living. And if they don't have that exposure, unfortunately, they're going to be limited. Their view of what's possible is extremely, extremely limited. Robin?
Ngamla, I wrote a book. My book is called Black Child Rise.
Yeah.
And there's a chapter that talks about the narrative of Kasi.
Yeah.
You speak of exposure. the guy that I used to look up to, he's late now. His name was Dr. Makubela.
Yeah.
Yeah. All my friends.
Yeah.
Now you're making reference to the word exposure. Majority of the Mahotman, the people that, like, I've got an older brother.
Yeah.
So we used to look up to him and his peers because of they are older than us.
Yeah.
They also had a generation of who they look up to.
Sure.
Majority of the people that we look up to go Kasi. When we say Mahotman, very few chose the academic route, to be honest. Right? And the word exposure also leads to what we call mentorship.
Sure.
So someone that you look up to. So I'm going to be honest, Ngamla, I've always looked up to you from a financial point of view and from the street smart point of view, because I've been with you in rooms where there are CEOs, there are directors, and academically they might be stronger than you, but I'm like, hey, this guy commands attention. He says something, even the CEO keeps quiet. That was me seeing you in that light.
Yeah.
But in the hood, there are people that are hosing Libona, but their way of living and how they made their lifestyle and everything didn't come from going to school, graduating, and actually having a proper job. It came from Upanda and what they do, Gogasi. So do you see the risk now of a young black child growing up in the hood? The limitations of unemployment are very high now because this thing,
Yeah.
Marakio Tepo or Tabi, so he can do it quickly, and there he's driving himself a GTI. What do you make of that in terms of what are we exposed to? Because the people that we're exposed to are doing it differently. And also there's the term that if you want to make it, you need to align yourself with people that that basically live the narrative that you want.
Yeah.
Like enough, for example, all my circle, I'm here.
Yeah.
And everyone else is here.
Yeah.
Because I look up to these people.
Yes.
But I had to remove myself from this circle that I know it doesn't empower me.
Yeah.
But it's not easy for the average black child. So my question then to you, Ngamla, is who's supposed to mentor, especially for that kid, Wako Gas, Wako Alex, because everyone else in our environment, Ki.
So, first of all, congratulations on your book.
Yeah,
I can't wait to have a read.
Yeah.
So, Tabza, I see some of the work that you do where you go into Kokasi and you provide some of that mentorship.
Yeah.
You go in and you try to be impactful on people's lives. I see some of the work that you do, I see it even in your social media. I mean, even if you look at the title of your book, Black Child Rise, it's indicative of exactly what it is that you're saying right now in terms of, how do we expose our youth to the fact that you can actually do it the right way.
Yeah.
And mind you, I mean, you can do it anyway, really. And I'm not endorsing, whether it's crime or whatever the case may be, but kupanda, at the end of the day, if you have to be, if you have to find a way, you have to find a way. And once again, I'm saying not necessarily the criminal way. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one to say, who's going to mentor the youth. But once again, it's about them getting... we live in a very globalized time, Wanatabza. I mean, you've got, however hundreds of thousands of followers, it means people are watching your stuff. It means you've got a platform to influence people. It means you've got a platform to send a message across. And not just you, many other people as well. I think between, 5 of you that have got each 500,000 and you reaching at least a couple of million people. And those are the platforms that we should use to start influencing people in a positive kind of way. Unfortunately, there will always be forces working against you. Yeah. There will be. There will be forces working against you. There'll be certain people that are glorified that shouldn't be glorified. There'll be certain ways to get cash quick or whatever, success quickly, that is glorified that shouldn't be glorified. That's just the world, unfortunately, that we live in. But the problem for me is even bigger. I mean, the problem is bigger, and the root cause of the problem, once again, is what are we as the different sectors, whether it's government, whether it's private, what are we doing about it? Where are we chipping in to see? Papi, you've placed 327 people.
Yeah, it was 26. Then yesterday we got one, so it's 27.
You got one.
Yeah.
Well done. Congrats. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that you must have at least tried to place 1,000, 1,500 people for you just to get the 327.
Yeah.
Well, understand?
Yeah.
You had to get rejected 700 times, for you to get to 327.
Correct.
All right? it's tough for you, the middleman. You're the middleman, which means because you're the middleman, let's call you the expert. You found a way to infiltrate these different businesses and say, can you place this person? Can you place this person? Now take the person who doesn't have a middleman like you, all right? And this person needs to go out and find this job. Unfortunately, their job to find a job is so much harder than yours because only you've got the relationships, you've got the know-how, you've got, all of these things. That very same person is sitting there and looking around, like the example that you made, looking around and saying, what's next? Well, understand? They look around and they see that, oh, there's Papi driving his GTI. Papi doesn't look like he's got a job. Papi's always here, go chisanyama, katswa koloi, and whatever. Argi sotetsa go Papi. Hey, Papi, no. Papi arzwagala kufake. I mean, the propensity of that happening is high. It's high, It's high at that point, which is why I'm saying there'll always be forces working against you. Even down to the actual person themselves. Those are the forces that are working against them. Let's call it poverty or lack of finance or lack of resources. Those are the emona tshwantse ke internet cafe ke batla spine ba itse ke apply ke romele dideng tshwantse ke lo printa CV tshwantse ke lo dideng akna yona ayo what happened? Those are the forces that are working against them. So, it's got to be us. It's got to be us. It's got to be us who try and reach as many people as possible in whatever way that we can reach them. I see a lot of people really, really trying on social media, including yourself. I really, really, really do. And I'm hoping that it's getting to the places that it needs to get to. But there's forces that are going to be working against you.
Growing up, and in some households, probably they still feel the same thing. Short courses have always been looked down upon.
Yeah.
And to some degree, there's always been that element that when I short course, unless if you actually have a degree or something. I'm not disregarding the fact that people need to go to varsity. But do you think in today's society, considering even unemployment rate and how the world has changed, how impactful are short courses? And I'm sure, I've got a right to ask you this because you're more familiar with them. Do you think they're very impactful in the context of bridging the gap of unemployment and making sure those who are unemployed, at least they become sustainable?
I think it would be unfair, Papi, for me to say that any form of educating yourself is not impactful.
Yeah.
Particularly given the current state that we are at as far as unemployment is concerned. Anything that can get me either a qualification, get me a better skill, get me a better understanding of the workplace, get me a better understanding of certain processes is always, always, always going to benefit you. Short courses, if that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. Because a lot of short courses equals a long course. So I definitely think there's value in it. I think there's value in these short courses, maybe tunaboma operations. Then you sort of understand when you walk into an environment to say, oh, okay, now I'm putting the pieces together. Oh, I understand. Oh, this process goes here and so on and so on. The RE that you teach and the guys go and they pass it, it empowers them. They can walk into now a financial institution with their head held up high and say, no, I've got a RE, I've got a couple of credits as well. I'm fit and proper. Understand how the industry works because I've been educated. You understand? So there's always value in it. Can it bridge the gap? I think that is a different question because bridging the gap is more, I keep going back to the state of our economy. In order for unemployment to go down, the economy needs to grow. If the economy is not growing, unemployment will not go down. When the economy is growing, more jobs are created, more people are hired, and the level of unemployment starts to go down. When the economy is regressing, the unemployment starts to increase and more people get unemployed. There's a direct correlation. You understand? So which is why I say the problem I think is definitely bigger than that. Yes, bridging the gap by empowering yourself, bettering yourself, and so on and so on. I think at a micro level works. If I'm sitting with 20 people here and I say, how can I improve the chances of these 20 people to get a job? And at the rate that the economy is going, the likelihood is that these 20 people are replacing other people as opposed to new jobs getting created for these 20 people. You understand? And these 20 people that are going to get hired, 30 people have lost their jobs, which means we're still regressing. You understand? So once again, it will always tie back to what is happening from an economical perspective at a broader level, at a national level. At a micro level, it's different. In Joburg, it might be a little bit different. Your location also, your geographical location. Some areas have a higher employment rate than other areas. Whether you call it Eastern Cape might have a higher unemployment rate than Pretoria or than the Northwest, for example. The Northwest might be hiring a lot of people into the mines. Joburg might be a lot more industrialized, so we can do impact sourcing. Durban might have a lot of call centers, so we can do impact sourcing. We can hire 1,000 people a month. Western Cape maybe only hires 100 people a month. So it's really about, economics at the end of the day. In order for us to create the jobs, what are we doing? There's companies that are in growth phase at the moment and are hiring people. But is it enough to sustain the unemployment rate? Probably not.
My last question. There's Papi Go Alex, who lives in Alex. If you and I drive to Alex right now, every street we're going to see Majida Jalama Daisi. We're going to see some gents sitting in the corner there drinking alcohol. I mean, we grew up in environments where it would have been ill of you to do that. Say, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But now it has been normalized in our society, especially if I look at the township of Alex, right? What would be your advice? And before I use the word advice loosely, let me create a picture, Ngamla. There's that guy, Kipapi, Uplamako Alex. I mean, we touch base on a lot of things, mentorship, your surroundings, and so forth. Unfortunately, if I live in Alex, my surroundings, my friends, majority of them are Rispan. I always tell my students that if you come into my class and you're unemployed, you're sitting next to Neo and he's unemployed, don't make friends with him. You guys have nothing to talk about because both of you guys are unemployed. So little guy, if the person on your left is employed, that one should be your friend because that's how you're going to empower yourself. That person is you'll be asking the right questions. When are they applying? How was your CV? Do you understand? So you got to learn how to position yourself. I'm not saying disregard that person as a human, but in terms of building relationships, rather focus on this one as opposed of that one. Now, my question then to Ngamla is, what would you say to that papi sitting ko Alexi who's unemployed and his surroundings are similarly because everyone else around him is unemployed? They probably have given up, they've lost hope that unemployment works, and they've succumbed to the narrative of, kokasi, it's the norm. If we're poor, we're poor. What would it take to change that young black child, to transform him, or to shape his mind, or to move him away from this Kasi narrative to becoming someone like you and I, who at least have jobs, who have been elevated, to say the least? What will it take?
Look, I think once again it's about how the person is shaped, and how the person is shaped is what allows. Look, man, if the unemployment rate where I stay in the population is, because remember it will vary from place to place. Yeah. You understand? We say at aggregate the unemployment rate is whatever. What do we say? 40% or whatever the number is on aggregate. But in Alex versus Soweto might be 60%, Alex might be 50%, which means the likelihood of me being surrounded by unemployed people, depending on where I am, is higher as opposed to other places.
Correct.
You understand? And who I allow to influence me also depends on me. You understand? It really does depend on me. And then it speaks to a lot of other things that we've already spoken about, which is, who mentors me, who do I look up to, whose voice am I hearing when I open up TikTok? What am I seeing on TikTok? You understand? What are my interests? But it's unavoidable that it's 3:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday afternoon. You're standing ko spaza shop or fetsa pa lustro. Of course, you're standing with people that don't work because it's 3:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Yeah, you understand? You're standing next to somebody that also needs. You understand? But it's a shared. It should be a shared ambition that you guys have. It should be a shared. And please, man, I don't think we need to, sort of. Let's not dilute this in terms of saying that it's a Kasi narrative. I think it's a narrative anyway. I think there's a child sitting in Sandton in a mansion whose parents are sick and tired of him playing PlayStation all day. you know, or about his pan. He doesn't care. He's just sitting there. Elena is given up because he's also been rejected.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that there is more from a population perspective in certain areas.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to that person or to those people that are standing next to each other and maybe losing hope, maybe losing, it's like waiting for a bus, Tabza.
Yeah.
Me and you, the three of us are sitting, we're waiting for a bus. We don't know what time the bus is going to come. We don't know if they're on strike. We don't know if it's going to arrive. But there's one of us saying, yes, wagala no. There's one of us saying, man, asinyandule. There's one of us saying, angne tiger, let's catch a taxi. Can you see? There's three different thoughts there. You understand? You might say, no, let's wait for it. And 5 minutes later, it rocks up. You might say, let's wait for it. 30 minutes later, it hasn't rocked up. I could sit there and say, but kitarana mele taxi mus. He could sit there and say, but I told you guys, let's take a walk. You understand? So, there's many ways, to look at this thing. And unfortunately, once again, like I said, it's historical. The situation that our townships are in, it's historical. And some of what we're seeing right now is as a result of just injustices that have been done in the past. Yeah. Some of the mindsets that we are currently seeing right now is as a result of injustices done in the past. But for us to sit there and say, I don't want to carry the narrative of, the people in certain areas, unfortunately, are doomed because of what surrounds them. Yeah. I'd rather look at it in a positive way and say, that should be what drives them. Well, understand? That really should be what drives them. Once again, there'll always be forces working against you. Yeah. Always there'll be forces working against you. But some of the most successful people are going to be people from those kinds of backgrounds. Those are going to be the people that are running this country. Our youth, the majority of our youth is sitting there. How we better our education system, what we ask these kids to go and study, how hard we are on them in terms of, let's say, call it studying maths and stuff like that. Because our future now is digital. The future of this country, if you've got a 16-year-old in your house like I do, I understand that his future is digital. I know that boy needs to go and learn how to code and learn how to do dieting. Even doesn't mean that he's going to go be a computer engineer, but he needs to have the know-how. Mm-hmm. He needs to understand, because that's where the world is headed. If you don't know how to click on a computer, how to be next? Child, you understand? Yeah. Your kids, but Xbox, let them play. Let them play, because even gaming, you understand? Because that is what's moving and propelling the world forward. But AI, all that kind of stuff, they need to understand it. They need to know what's going on. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody who doesn't know how to even use a computer. Or spy, mouse, understand? Did they have the exposure? Did they not get the right guidance? Did they not do the right subject? Was there not the right person saying to them, no, rather do this because that's where the future is headed? Or was it just, let's just finish school, man. Let's just, understand? Yeah. So, I think, once again, as much as you can get that message out there, but the message must be that you can make it out. And when I say make it out, I don't even mean make it out physically out of the hood. Yeah. I'm just saying you can get out of what, maybe what you think that you are chained to. Because maybe you don't know any better. Maybe you just don't have the exposure to look around. You haven't seen it. Maybe you haven't seen it. I mean, there's places I haven't seen, man. The other day, I don't know where I was driving. Was it Hyde Park? I'm like, ooh. I'm like, understand? Hey, so look at you, how do we get there now? Understand? Yeah. So it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing.
Kamla, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. It's our first episode.
Yeah.
And man, I hope for the young black child, whether you're staying at home, whether it's a kasi, whether it's in the suburb, it doesn't matter. I hope this session has some sort of impact in your life. More importantly, understanding that you need to be uncomfortable to be comfortable. Till we meet again, we're out. Thank you, Kamla.
Thank you, Tabza.